Kushner is not buying that island in Albania to turn it into a luxury resort. The story that they've put out is that this is a luxury resort project backed by the Saudis and facilitated by the Albanian government. So this is the island here. Look what even Google Maps has labelled this as, firstly. But let's zoom out a bit. That island is here, right there. It is at the exact point where the Adriatic Sea becomes the Ionian Sea, approximately 56 miles from Italy. The single most important geographic fact to understand is that whoever controls this island, Strazan, controls the Strait of Otranado. This narrow choke point between Albania and Italy is the only maritime gateway between the Adriatic and the Mediterranean. Historically, every single navy that has ever wanted to dominate this area or control trade through it has had to occupy and fortify Sazan. This means a lot of the work is already done for them. There are 3,600 nuclear survivable bunkers on this island. There's also 10 miles of underground tunnels connecting command posts, ammunition stores, submarine pens and hideouts. There are Soviet submarine pens and deep water anchorages already there, ready for use. All of this militarizing of the island, preparation for nuclear war, was done during the Hoxha regime. I will do a separate video about the Hoxha regime in Albania. But here's the full chain of control. It passed from the Ottomans to the Italians to the Albanians to the Soviet Navy, back to the Albanians, and now suddenly it's going to a private American cartel. The through line here is that it has been a military garrison for the local navy. The exception at the end is that it's now being sold to Jared Kushner. Why is Europe allowing the Project 2025 guys to buy their own nuclear garrison in the middle of the Adriatic Sea? Well, we're not, because this was Albania yesterday. Shout out to anybody that was there, you absolute legends. It's not technically correct to say that it's Kushner and Ivana that are buying this island either. This is the Delaware Corporate Registry. This is the entity Atlantic Incubation Partners LLC. This is who's buying the island. That LLC is linked to Kushner's company Affinity Partners. And the CEO of Affinity Partners, Asher Abashira, is also listed as the chairman of Sazan Real Estate Development Company LLC. The legal home of Atlantic Incubation Partners is Delaware. It was formed on the 5th of April 2023, EN 9233299707. Kushner is the public face of this, but I'd like to introduce you to the rest of the Affinity Partners team. You'll get it here. Chad Mizell is Senior Legal Counsel for Affinity Partners. He served as Chief of Staff to the United States Justice Department in 2025. That's an immediate conflict of interest, and we're only at the first name. Nick Butterfield was the former Deputy White House Policy Coordinator from August 2019 to January 2021 under Donald Trump. Also, before that, he interned during George W. Bush's administration. When you search for Lauren Key, the first thing that comes up is the letter that the US Finance Committee had to send her in this CFO role a year ago, saying specifically, I write seeking information relating to the recent revelation that 99% of the investment funds that you are managing is coming from the Saudi Arabian government. This is Chairman Wyden's letter to her, where he literally opens it saying, it is deeply concerning that several Middle Eastern governments are using funds managed by Affinity as a means to pay millions of dollars in fees to the president's son. When I search for the name John Rader, the first thing that comes up is his bio at the Hoover Institution that confirms he is also senior counselor at Palantir and was chief of staff to the US Senator Bill Hagerty. He also spent 4 years in the White House. The next slide is what they call their Global Research and Geoeconomics team. The first one, Major General Miguel Correa, is a retired Green Beret 2-star US Army general. He was the Defense Attaché, which is the highest ranking member of the armed forces stationed in an overseas embassy. He was in Dubai. There, he coordinated a secret 2017 US Special Forces rescue of a downed Emirati helicopter in Yemen. He saved a wounded Emirati royal and became the personal hero to the Crown Prince. He is credited with coining the name Abraham Accords. Charming. The next one is Kevin Hassett, Head of Global Research. Another screaming conflict of interest. Hello? Is the US democracy just for decoration? He is currently the director of the White House National Economic Council, the most senior economic policy job in the building. He is also a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, a teacher at the Columbia Business School, and has research affiliation with NBER. So the man who is currently the architect of US economic policy is also the head of research at a fund that is 99% financed by Middle East countries. That is a live conflict of interest, an unresolved one that demands a disclosure check. But it's not my country, so somebody should put some pressure on. And then this one, Cale Klingenpeel, is the former chief economist at the America First Policy Institute. You know, the Trump-aligned policy shop? Now, they're partners. Asad Nayavi is also a partner at Apis Partners, a private equity fund, and Wolfenson Fund Management, another private equity fund that was founded by the previous World Bank president James Wolfenson. He's also ex-Lazard. It's weird how I read those positions as crimes, but he would probably hear them as a flattering compliment. But anyway, the pattern across his CV is the same machine, extracting fees from the poorest people on earth and dressing that up as inclusion. It's similar with the second one. Brett Perlman is also PE investment banking. I'd love these men to know that if I was sitting looking pretty in a bar with my girlfriends and they tried to send us drinks, I would spit in it and walk out. He was Blackstone's first ever undergraduate hire in 1989, rising to senior managing director. He then went on to co-found Elevation Partners, another private equity firm, a Silicon Valley one. Avi Berkowitz, also in the White House under the Trump administration. He worked on Trump's peace plan, the Gaza peace plan, and on the Abraham Accords. He was actually the lead White House negotiator on the Abraham Accords, the deal that normalised Israel's relations with the UAE. And then Tom Storch, according to the Atlantic Council, is a distinguished fellow in the project for the Middle East integration. Also, the deputy director of the National Economic Council, the deputy assistant to the president for the International Economic Affairs, the US lead negotiator at the G20 and the G7 coordination during the US host year 2020, senior director for global economics at NSC, and a senior international affairs official at the Department of Energy. This is going to have to be a two-parter.
Good afternoon. This is JC, St. Louis's oldest living hippie, and I am bringing you this video, which is a duet that I did here on TikTok, and it's long, but I have to say it's worth listening to every second of it, and I urge you not to just jump out when it's you're tired or something, but to actually listen to the entire video. So anyway, thank you very much.